Welcome back to Pro Sex Studio. I'm Brian Downs, and in this episode we're looking at the sexual subtext of Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, the 2008 teenage romance and comedy. And this one's on my nephew. I'd mentioned this channel to him and he said, "You should try Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist." And I thought, okay, sure. It was a popular film at the time of its release, and I've never seen it before. So I started watching it and I realized, no, I have seen this before. I saw it when it came out and I hated it so much that I exterminated it from my memory. Now though, thanks to my nephew, I'm stuck watching it again. So this one's on you, Zach. Here's the basic idea. Nick, played by Michael Cera, is heartbroken because Tris, played by Alexis Zenia, dumped him. Nick wanted a sexual relationship with Tris, maybe even had a sexual relationship with Tris, although that can't be proved, and is left only with pain. This is in the backstory. We don't even see them express their sexuality with each other one time on screen, not once, not in a flashback, not anywhere. There's not even one kiss in the collection of photos of her that hangs on Nick's bedroom wall. This is negative meme number 1. There are 12 negative memes about sexuality that you're constantly bombarded with in Hollywood's great plan to make you feel terrible about your sex organs. This is the most common one, the wanting disaster. Wanting sex, pursuing sex, having sex leads to a bad result. And in this case, it's the wanting disaster in the past tense. They were in a relationship, now they are enemies. Not exactly enemies, certainly not in a good relationship. Nick is filled with pain and Tris doesn't care. That Tris was a disaster for Nick is reinforced by the fact that Tris is an awful bitch just as soon as we meet her. Literally bragging to her classmate Nora about how Nick is still making her mixed CDs in 2008, even though she dumped him down an emotional elevator shaft on his birthday. But Nora grabs those CDs that Tris slaps into the trash because she loves the artistic sensibility displayed therein. Nick has 2 fellow jerk-offs. That's the name of their band, the Jerk-Offs. Tom and Dev. They are both gay, but the only way we know that is because Nick says to them, "You don't know what it's like to be straight. It's awful." Nick's first statement on his own sexuality is about how much suffering it causes him. This is the negative meme, danger is sex. Sexuality and sex are presented as dangerous, as causes of suffering, as off-putting, as frightening. Or conversely in this meme, sex is presented, or rather danger is presented as sexy. But the case here is that his sex life causes him pain. Tom and Dev's relationship, by the way, lacks all eroticism. Their lives seem to lack almost all eroticism. Are they supposed to be a couple? But the fact that Tom and Dev have apparently no sex lives is pushing sex off stage. Now Tom and Dev are gay because now the movie can be like, oh look, we included some LGBT people. Well, yeah, sure, but you don't include any actual gay sex or romance. So you don't get a lot of points from me on that. All of these characters are pointed at each other because it's Friday night and the Jerk-Offs have a gig. Also, Fluffy, the coolest band in any New York garage, is going to be playing a pop-up show somewhere in the city. So everyone heads into town for the fun. Tris brings a date to the show, which might be a chance for her to express her sexuality in a positive way, except that the purpose of her date is to make Nick jealous. She succeeds at that, which drives Nick into an elaborate fantasy of Tris kneeling on a bed and modeling a sexy little outfit for him. This is clearly painful for Nick to imagine. Your problem is sex. That's yet another negative meme. When protagonists are interested in sex, have sex, pursue sex, it's presented as a character flaw. It's something they have to overcome or get past or abandon. That Nick is still attracted to Tris and still clearly sexually attracted to Tris, who, by the way, is remarkably sexy. Why shouldn't he be attracted to Tris? But let's talk about that in a second. Then this is Nick's problem, his sexual attraction to Tris. This is another thing the movies do. As I said, Tris is remarkably sexy. Characters are portrayed as being stupid or foolish for being attracted to people who are really attractive. Why? Would a character be presented as foolish for being interested in eating a beautiful apple? No. So why is it that being attracted to attractive people means that you're stupid? Anyway, Nora's night quickly gets more complicated because of her friend Caroline. Out on the town with Nora, Caroline gets drunk, which means she gets flirtatious with the men in the club and she starts making out with at least one of them. This is presented as a problem and something that requires the intervention of her friends. Your problem is sex. Caroline's character flaw is that she drinks too much and starts to flirt with men. This is also dangerous sex because binge drinking and sexuality are presented as synonymous. That's another incarnation of the dangerous sex meme, where sex and substance abuse are almost always presented as the same thing. A character who is having sex is very likely an alcoholic or a drug addict. Notice that Nora has no sexual past at all and no sexual present. She's not in a relationship. She doesn't mention having ever been in a relationship. As far as we know, she's a virgin. This is what makes her the girl for Nick. This is what makes it acceptable for Nick to be interested in Nora. And as soon as Nora sees him on stage, her attraction to him is obvious, even though she doesn't realize that this jerk-off is the same person who makes the mix CDs that she so admires. Drunk Caroline is the first to remark on Nora's interest in Nick when she says, "Oh my God, you dirty little slut. You're practically blowing him with your eyes." Notice the negative vocabulary of sex. Caroline doesn't say, "Isn't he cute? You should go talk to him." Caroline isn't positive or encouraging to her close friend. Instead, she speaks in a language of reprimand and shame for no other reason than Nora looked at one of the performers on stage. Your problem is sex. Caroline is saying to Nora, your sexuality is something you deserve to be shamed for. Nora instantly denies all interest in Nick because she must, because sex is bad, kids. Triss is soon showing her date, Gary, who is in college, off to Nora because Triss is really especially awful and wants to make sure Nora is very aware of her own singlehood. In an attempt to defend herself from this transparent manipulation, Nora claims that the jerk-off guitarist is her boyfriend, walks up to Nick and kisses him, not realizing that she is kissing Triss's ex, the maker of the heartrending mixed CDs. But she realizes it when Triss reacts with instant jealousy, and Nora's reaction is one of disgust. She tells Caroline, "I just made out with Triss's sloppy seconds." Nick and Nora kiss, and immediately Nick, Nora, and Triss are all upset. The wanting disaster, trying to have sex even to the point of kissing someone, not because she's attracted to him, but she is clearly attracted to him. She didn't go and kiss the homeless guy is sitting on the bench outside. She kissed the guitarist she had just been eyeing. But Nick and Nora kiss, and immediately everyone's upset. Complications ensue. Disaster. Why is Nora fleeing from Nick? Because she has learned that Nick has apparently had sex. But Nick's bandmates, Tom and Dev, descend with their wacky gay roommate brand of wisdom. They whisk the now nearly unconscious Caroline away in their big gay indie band van, promising to deposit her safely at home, while sending Nick and Nora into the New York night to find Fluffy and love. In the second iteration of a recurring joke, Nick's Yugo gets mistaken for a taxi cab by a couple who embrace so vigorously in his backseat that he has to spray it down and wipe it off afterward. So sex is a weird, embarrassing, gross thing done by stupid people. And it is not sexy or fun. Danger is sex. And your problem is sex. What's wrong about the people in the back seat? What's repulsive about them? They're demonstrating their sexuality. It's not long after this that Triss comes up in conversation, which seems like a natural thing to happen. She is Nick's ex and Nora's schoolmate, and Nick is still in pain over her dumping him on his birthday. He's still hoping to win her back. But Nora does not like hearing about Triss, literally because Triss is thinner and more beautiful than she is, and Nora has decided that she is now pursuing Nick. She hasn't mentioned that to Nick. Nora starts shouting angrily at Nick because he's talking about Triss. Nick shouts angrily back. Nora demands to be let out of the car. Nick pulls over and lets her out and says that she is jealous. Nora announces, "Okay, douchebag, let's dance," and comes all the way around the parked car to punch Nick in the throat and scream, "I am not jealous." Notice that they are not on a date. They are not in a relationship. Nora hasn't even expressed her romantic and sexual interest in Nick to Nick, but somehow when Nick mentions his ex, it's perfectly sensible to start yelling and quickly move on to punching. Why? Because Nick is talking about sex. In an indirect way. He's talking about Triss, who was his sexual partner. He doesn't make any direct reference to having sex with Triss, but that's really what he's talking about, his former sexual relationship with Triss. Therefore, it's reasonable for her to punch him in the throat. Which brings us to a subplot on my channel, bad behavior in women. We often see bad behavior in female characters that, if it had been done by a male character, would be unacceptable, absolutely inadmissible, would brand the male character as a villain. Nick starts talking about his ex. Nora starts shouting at him. He shouts back at her. She punches him in the throat. Can we imagine a movie, a scene, where the sexes were reversed, where Nora started maybe talking about Triss, her schoolmate, and said something not so flattering about Triss, and Nick got angry and punched Nora in the throat? Would that be charming? Would that prove that Nick is a guy who's got, resilience and heart? No, it would be appalling. But when Nora does it, it's cute. You would think that this would be the end of their brief relationship, but no. Drunk Caroline has regained consciousness, and finding herself in the back of a van full of men she doesn't recognize or remember, she runs screaming into the night. So now Nick, Nora, Tom, Dev, and another dude are off to find her in all of New York. What is Caroline running away from? The fear of being sexually assaulted by these strangers in a van, who in fact are all gay, so that makes them okay, and they were going to take her home and drop her off on her own front porch. Dangerous sex. On this mission to find drunk Caroline, they run into Tal, Jay Baruchel. Tal, who by the way is a terrifically interesting performer, Jay Baruchel, and doesn't work enough. Tal greets Nora with a kiss and invites her to spend the evening with him. Nora does not reject his advances. She does not say, "No, I'm not interested, we're not involved. We may have been in the past, but not today." No, she doesn't. She merely takes her leave of him without giving him a clear answer of whether she's coming back or whether she's interested in his invitation. Tal is Nora's sort of my ex-boyfriend most of the time, as Nora describes it. This upsets Nick, who had been warming to the woman who socked him in the Adam's apple. What is Nora's dark secret? What is the big plot twist? What is the first thing the movie presents as being a barrier between them? Was it the violence? No. It's that Nora is sort of in a sexual relationship with someone else while trying to flirt with Nick through the medium of shouts and punches. Your problem is sex. Her relationship with Tal is her problem, is a barrier she has to overcome, something she has to leave behind. When she had no sexual past, she was the girl for Nick. Now that she has both a past and a present, it looks like their love is doomed. And again, back to bad behavior in women. Let's try to imagine a wacky comedy wherein Nick pursues Nora with high decibel criticism of how she's trying to heal her broken heart, combined with some non-consensual aikido, while he's simultaneously stringing another girl along. Would that be a protagonist? Would he be the hero of this story? He'd be the villain. But when Nora does it, it's cute. Triss is following the search party, determined to sabotage any chance of a relationship between Nick and Nora. Triss confronts Nora in private, demanding to know if she likes Nick. Nora does not answer that question. Why not? Why not just tell Triss, "Yes, I do"? Because she's a heroine. This is another negative meme. Serious people don't sex. Nora is our heroine, believe it or not, so she can admit to her attraction to Nick. Also, in this conversation, we learn that somehow Tris knows that Nora has never had an orgasm. If Nora and Nick have sex and Nora doesn't have an orgasm, then Nick's self-esteem might really go in the crapper, you know? Tris is expressing her concern. Also, we learned that Nora knows that Tris was unfaithful to Nick for their entire 6-month relationship. But this point never comes up again. It's presented as another reason to dislike Tris, except there's plenty of reasons to dislike Tris. It never comes up again. Nora never tells Nick this information. She withholds it from Nick. Don't you think Nick would want to know? This is the negative meme, it's villains who sex. Who has a varied sex life with more than one partner? Tris, the villain. What is the worst thing Tris has done to Nick? Had sex. This is the level up of the offense. She dumped him, well, okay. She had sex with someone else while she was involved with Nick. Again, there's no proof in this movie that she ever had sex with Nick. There's no direct reference to that. They were involved, she was his girlfriend, but no one ever mentions their sex life outside of the word girlfriend, which does imply sexual relationship. The worst thing she's done is had sex, because it's villains who sex. This is the big villainous reveal. Tris had sex. It isn't what is the worst thing she could do. Not that she dumped him, not that she flushed his goldfish down the toilet or maxed out his Visa card. It's that Tris had sex. Or at least the word cheated implies that she had sex, but that soft language is as close as we get to anyone having sex. Tris is Nick's dreaded ex, but neither Tris nor Nick nor anyone else, as I've already mentioned, ever make any direct reference to them having had sex. Nick never says, I want Tris for my lover again. Tom never says, poor Nick, he got sucked in by the sex. No one makes any direct reference to anyone's sexual past, because you have to push sex off stage. They find Caroline, and so Nick and Nora part. Nora's unorthodox courtship techniques having failed to work on the garage band boy. This is when Tris catches up with Nick and asks for a ride home, which means sex. Tris, having seen Nick with Nora, has now decided that she is jealous and wants to possess him again, at least temporarily. She asks him to park the car in a secluded spot. She starts touching Nick and whispering sexy things in his ear. She takes his hand and puts it over her breast while smiling into his eyes. She literally gets out of the car and dances seductively in the headlights, on the hood. Has Nora done anything remotely like this? No, she has not. Mostly she yells at Nick and hits him. She has not said, I want you to be my boyfriend. Hey, you want to make out? What do you think of having a sexual encounter with me? She hasn't done any of that. Tris asserting her sexuality is synonymous with Tris asserting her villainy. It's villains who sex. Nora doesn't do anything like this because she's our heroine, I guess. And Nick's big heroic moment of decisive action is to drive away from Tris's performance and go in search of the woman who has shown no sexual interest in him whatsoever. And this is where we're going to talk about Nora's shirt. Back when Tom and Dev, Nick's gay bandmates, swooped in to push these two crazy kids into the same Yugo, Dev paused to cajole Nora into changing her shirt. Luckily, Dev had an underwire bra in Nora's size in the van, along with a low-cut blouse. Nora goes along with Dev's plan and changes her clothes with the deliberate purpose of getting Nick's sexual attention, and minutes later, as soon as Nick's eyelids flutter just a bit in the direction of her cleavage, she says, hey, eyes up here. I am on Team Tris. She has her drawbacks, I agree. But when she wants Nick, she makes herself clear. And when she doesn't want Nick, she makes that clear. And she punches him in the larynx noticeably less than Nora does. Nora, on the other hand, deliberately changes her clothes for the purpose of attracting Nick's sexual attention. And then when Nick barely looks at her cleavage when she's standing 2 feet in front of him in a shirt she just changed into, she reprimands him, eyes up here. What is he supposed to think? That says, no, that's a big stop sign, Nora. Maybe this is why your personal life is such a mess. In the meantime, while Nick was rejecting Tris, Nora went back to Tal, who she kept on standby while she tried to seduce Nick with blows to the neck. But she decides to reject Tal because Tal leans into his Jewish identity. The name of his band is Azrael, which is the name of a Talmudic angel, and their CD has a large Star of David on the cover. Nora is Jewish, but Tal is apparently too Jewish, which is strange because they've been dating off and on for years. You didn't know this about him? That this was how he felt about his cultural identity? And the final nail in his coffin is he displays too much interest in her family's wealth and influence because Nora's father is a famous music producer. Tal is a greedy Jew, which is the second to lowest point in this morass of bad writing. Nora ultimately rejects Tal because he's too Jewish and he's greedy. This is when Nora decides to reveal that her father is a famous music producer by taking Nick to her father's famous recording studio. And she has a key, they go in, it's after hours. She's showing him around. He's very impressed by the place, and here's where Nora behaves like an asshole again. She's showing Nick around. Now, Nick is a musician. He's in a band. Of course he's impressed to be here. Nora, you chose to bring him here. He's impressed to be in this famous place. And then Nora says, hey, I like that one song you wrote. You want to record the song? Let's record the song while we're here in the famous recording studio. Nick says, oh my, really? Nora says, yeah, let's do it. Nick goes into the actual recording room. He puts on the earphones. He's standing there with a guitar. Nora is in the sound booth. But then she decides no. She says, Nick, I'm coming in. She comes in to the recording room, makes Nick put down his guitar, and then they have a sexual encounter on the couch in the recording room. He brings her to her forced orgasm, clearly with his hand. They don't take their clothes off. She just undoes her jeans, and he puts his hand down her jeans and brings her to orgasm. She took him to the famous recording studio to wow him with this place, which was she certainly accomplished. Then she says, how would you like to record your song here in the famous recording studio? And he's like, wow, really? And she's like, nah, just kidding. Why don't you get me off instead? Nick gets no attention here, right? She barely touches Nick. Nick doesn't really have sex. He does sex to Nora, which she enjoys a lot. Now, this is interesting that the movie did do this, where our heroes have a sexual encounter and it's not followed immediately by a big disaster. But it's just another demonstration of Nora being terrible and selfish. You know, you are going to give me an orgasm, and remember I said we were going to record your song? We're not, because I've decided I'd rather have the orgasm. Then we have the very stupid climax of the film where all the characters converge on the Fluffy show, and both Tal and Triss make plays for our heroes again and are rejected again. Triss, did you not get the hint when he drove away and left you standing by the river? And most interestingly, Nora never apologizes for driving her knuckles into Nick's throat. No one ever suggests that she should. This story is not about how Nora, the millionaire's daughter, learns to be a better person via the unlawful violence toward her romantic partner. It's not about how Nora, the millionaire's daughter, learns that punching working class people in the throat when they say something that irritates you isn't acceptable. It just goes on by. No one ever mentions it. She doesn't improve herself in any way. There's no reason to think that won't happen again the next time Nick says something she would rather not hear. And the incident is forgotten. So not only is this terrible, stupid film profoundly anti-sex, it's villains who sex. Your problem is sex. With the one exception of when, instead of being allowed to record the song that you were just promised, you are instead required to perform a sex act on your abusive girlfriend. But also, it seems to be pretty pro-domestic violence, as long as it's perpetrated on men. I'm annoyed that I had to watch it. Thanks for your time. Come back next week for another video in this same vein where I analyze the sexual subtext of famous movies and television shows. I'm Brian Downs, and this is ProSex Studios.